Hey guys, Skellington80 here. So, we are back with part 5 of 25 Days of Monsters, and today we bring you the story of Dorian Gray. Here's the picture of him. Dang. So, like I said before, I love the illustrations in this book. Tim Seivert is a wonderful illustrator, and I wish I could compliment him on them. Also, I mentioned before that I thought Beatrice Rappaccini might have inspired Poison Ivy, so if this guy didn't inspire Harvey Dent / Two-Face, I don't know who did, because this is freaking awesome. I'll have to ask, or no, I'll have to look it up. I might get some answers, I might not, who knows. So this guy was very briefly mentioned in the prologue, I believe. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Category, Cursed Human. Base of operations, London. When, the late 19th century. Powers, immortality, being ridiculously handsome. Weakness, vanity. Most dastardly deeds, murder and blackmail. And the fear factor is 3 little ghost faces, even though, as I have said before, it's kind of relative from person to person. He's from The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde in 1890, and I'm just going to warn you, this story is not exactly child-friendly, so this is your chance to turn back now. But if you decided to stick around, without further ado, let's get into it. Pity poor Dorian Gray. He was young, handsome, wealthy, and beloved by all, but he was cursed with a terrible fate. Someday he would grow old. That doesn't sound so bad, really. After all, everyone grows old. But Dorian was really quite handsome and lovable. When his friend, the painter Basil Hallward, produced his masterpiece, a life-size picture of Dorian Gray, Dorian found himself jealous of the portrait, just as he was jealous of everything whose beauty does not die. How unjust that Dorian Gray, the man, would grow old, so that someday his face would be wrinkled and wizened, his eyes dim and colorless, the grace of his figure broken and deformed, while the painting would remain forever youthful. If it were only the other way. And just like that, Dorian got his wish. From that moment on, Dorian ceased to age. He took the painting home with him, hung it on his wall, and never grew a day older. Soon after, Dorian met Lord Henry Wotton, a man of taste and a cynic. Lord Henry told Dorian that beauty is a form of genius, is higher indeed than genius, and that youth is the one thing worth having, that no civilized man ever regrets a pleasure, and no uncivilized man ever knows what a pleasure is. Lord Henry had lots of advice, and all of it was bad. Yeah, this is gonna go downhill fast. Under Lord Henry's influence, Dorian started behaving badly. He broke the heart of his girlfriend, Sybil Vane, and in grief she took her own life. And when Dorian glanced upon at Basil's painting on his wall, look upon the portrait, the face of Dorian Gray now had a wicked grin of vicious cruelty. Dorian realized that he could do whatever he wanted without consequence, leaving the painting to bear the burden of his shame. And it was all downhill from here. Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret, wild joys and wilder sins. That was Dorian's life. For 18 years, Dorian indulged in every wickedness under the sun, and none of it touched him. It only touched the evil and aging face on the canvas. The portrait became so twisted looking that Dorian hid it in an attic room. But word got around about Dorian Gray. Decent people would not be seen with him. Decent restaurants would not serve him. One day, Basil Hallward visited his old friend. He had heard disturbing rumors, 18 years' worth of disturbing rumors, and he wanted to know if they were true. Dorian Gray had such a pure, bright, innocent face that the most dreadful things they'd been saying about him couldn't possibly be true. With a bitter laugh, Dorian took Basil upstairs and showed him the portrait, after which he killed him. Finally, after many more years of corruption and blackmail, after many more ruined lives and dead bodies on his conscience, Dorian Gray decided he'd had enough of vice. He resolved to reform. And there's a blurb here that says, Lord Henry's best quips. Nowadays, most people die of a sort of creeping common sense and discover when it is too late that the only things one never regrets are one's mistakes. The reasons we all like to think so well of others is that we are all afraid for ourselves. The basis of optimism is sheer terror. It is only shallow people who do not judge by appearances. The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. Do not take his advice. Lord Henry is a butthole. Okay, let's get back to the story. But the painting, for all its subject's good intentions, still showed an aging, dissolute, evil murderer. Dorian could vow repentance all he wanted. The truth was in that portrait. So to rid the world of this one shred of evidence of his evil, Dorian stabbed the painting with a knife. A scream rang out. When servants and police broke into the attic room, they found, hanging upon the wall, a splendid portrait of a young and beautiful Dorian Gray. Next to it, lying on the floor, was a withered, wrinkled, and loathsome corpse with a knife in his heart. And so passed the immortal Dorian Gray. Alright, beyond the book. The sins of Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray is always indulging in vice or crime, but what exactly is he doing? The book spends more words describing Dorian in the act of researching perfumes or medieval tapestries than it does describing him in the act of doing something evil. Oscar Wilde was in a pickle. He wanted to write about a wicked character, but Victorian novelists were supposed to produce work that was rated G or at worst PG. Like Mr. Hyde, we'll get to him eventually. Dorian Gray runs around London getting into trouble, but exactly what kind of trouble can never be spoken. When Dorian starts killing people, things snap into place. But before that, readers must use their imaginations, and those imaginations got Oscar Wilde in trouble. Contemporary viewers called this book immoral. Oscar Wilde replied, "There is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. That is all." Oscar Wilde in the Reading Gale Gambit. Years after writing The Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde found himself tarred by scandal and shunned for the first time he'd spent in prison. He lived in poverty as no one would publish his writing. Finally, he produced a long anonymous poem called The Ballad of Reading Gale. It's spelled Gaol, for those of you who don't know. 1898, about the cruel conditions he experienced in prison. Gale is the prettiest British spelling for jail. Freed from the scandalous name of Wilde, the poem became a surprise hit, and there's a blurb from it. "I know not whether laws be right or whether laws be wrong. All that we know who lie in Gale is that the wall is strong, and that each day is like a year whose days are long." And that is it for today. I hope everyone has a happy Halloween. Thanks for watching. Tune in tomorrow for day 6 of 25 Days of Monsters, and like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you next time. Bye!